If you think 10 years ago, I don't think anybody would have said that Microsoft wouldn't have been in the list of the top 4 tech companies. There's a long history of tech and communication organisations having big dominance and then disappearing away in the way that, say, I don't know, automotive companies just haven't. So having dominance actually is productive. They get to a certain point where it starts to become exploitative, they get regulated, they get broken up, and then the next thing comes along. That's been the pattern since telephone, since cinema, since television, and we will see it with the next few waves of digital technology as well.
I dearly hope not, is what I would say to that. It's a really interesting one for me to balance what I do in technology with how I think as a human being and how I see my children develop as human beings. And there are many great things that these I guess big 4 giants that you call them, that they give us. The ability for me to buy anything I want and get it delivered next day is great. It makes my life easier. But at the same time, when I see people, my children, that spend too much time on a device and not interacting as human beings, that worries me. And so I think there's this sort of huge dilemma from a human behaviour point of view that I think will eventually, we will find that human behaviour will come through, and that's my hope, that actually people will think that, or people will kind of come to terms with the fact that they don't want their lives run by tools like Google or Facebook. And the challenge for those companies, those big companies, is how they manage their corporate responsibility. Right, the corporate responsibility around how they change the behaviours of individuals and how they affect them on an ongoing basis in terms of what they show them and present them. Because whilst they are, big digital native giants, they're businesses, and businesses need to make money. And the reality is, businesses have investors that are looking to grow, and they're looking to grow more money. And so what will happen, and this is where I think will happen, is that the reality of the capitalist economy will kind of dictate that these businesses have to grow, and they will do silly things, and then consumers will react to that in a way that humans will react to the way capitalism runs in general. And I feel that is probably the thing I think that will kind of undermine that change. The second thing is, I think the ownership of data is critical. I think people will quickly realise that actually, do you want that data to be owned by those big 4? And actually people understand what those big 4 are doing with that data. Again, comes back to how those companies use that data. And I think that will give the companies outside of the big 4 a sense to hold on. They already recognise that, and they will increasingly, I think, people will come to terms with how their data is being used. I think through misuse of it, because that's what will make the papers and the headlines. Misuse of data, to regulators that are kind of actually enforcing that, making you aware of how your data is being used. And I think that those are the kind of things. So, I sort of hope, and I think the natural way that the market works is when companies get too big, smaller companies come in and start eroding that and start finding ways that people will gravitate to, as they've gravitated to those big companies over the last 10 years.
I don't see it the way it is right now. I think that most governments, regulators, and also competing companies are waking up to the fact that they need to fight. They need to fight back. In Europe, for example, regulation is beginning to emerge with the GDPR, for example, regulation. Our laws are very restrictive as to how you treat the data of individuals, how you delete it, how you explain to your customers how you use the data. So that, for example, that legal environment doesn't exist in the US. So all these giants are going to have to modify their business models when they throw products at us in Europe. So that's one of the things that is going to create a handicap for them and an opportunity for our companies. And then let's not forget, many Europeans work for these companies. And many Europeans are behind massive innovations within these companies. All we need to do is manage to attract them to go back into perfectly amazing companies that have been giants and innovators for decades, not just 20 years. So I hope that there's a drainage of big brains and creative people that go back into some of our companies, and also that some of our big sector giants in luxury, in automotive, in FMCG, they quickly catch up with whatever they need to catch up, digitalization, human capital, and then they really fend off these people. I believe that it will not be rosy as they are right now, because 10 years is a very long time, and the world is going to change dramatically, politically, regulatory, and also consumers. For example, GDPR-wise, most European consumers are extremely aware that their data is being mined and is being utilized and are beginning to react to it, which is in the US is a different story. So now we're beginning to see geographical diversions. So no, I don't think it's going to be the roller coaster wave that they had.
It's hard to imagine a world without Google at this point, or even a world without Facebook. And I think what's really interesting in particular about Facebook, how they will acquire other startups that are doing quite well. They've got such scale and they have access to a lot of resources, so they're able to buy Oculus Rift or Messenger, any of the other apps that kind of grow in popularity. So even if younger generation merge into other channels, it's hard to see them disappearing completely. I think we'll definitely see new startups though, because we're always seeing them now, and it'll be a question of which ones really gain traction and which ones become popular with people.
I think, unfortunately, I see the dominance of some of the large players like Amazon or Facebook continuing over the next 10 years because they have such deep pockets. They're able to acquire so many companies and go in different directions. And so I think, that really will drive their continued dominance. I think that regulation and oversight and antitrust kinds of concerns may be the limiting factor more than competition.